Oh,
We will begin the program shortly. Yesterday, those who have not filled up the feedback form, please make it sure that today you fill the feedback form. shared the feedback link of yesterday. Those who were unable to fill the link may do the needful. So now the clock struck 4 o'clock. So we all are waiting to listen to another session or another talk on Mental Health Day. So welcome you all. Thank you for joining us for today's session. I, Mr. Charita Dutt, take this privilege to welcome you all for the second day of the week-long online discourse on the occasion of Mental Health Day Awareness Week. Yesterday we had a talk on telemental health on Mental Vishweet Day, and we are thankful for the enthusiastic response and interactive participation from all of you. Today we will be having a talk on eco-psychology by Ms. Shoma Pramanik. As we all know, and as quoted by a famous person, nature is the greatest place to heal and recharge. There is no doubt that the more closer we come or stay with nature, the better it gets constructed for our well-being. So today's session will also highlight on a very important aspect of nature. Now, without further ado, I would turn over to Mr. T. Mugesh, our officer in charge, for an overview on the topic. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Sucharita. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. You are.
Yeah, thank you. So, very good evening to all the participants. It's in fact it's my privilege also to welcome you all for this for today's talk, which is going to focus on eco-psychology, which Niepid Regional Center Kolkata has been taking up as part of the online discourse, which is being organized as part of the Mental Health Awareness Week. So, as quoted by Ms. Sucharita, we are really thankful for the overwhelming response what we got. We have here about 300 installations, and then we are expecting more people to join in a couple of minutes also. So, today's talk, as we said, it is going to be on eco-psychology. We all are living in an environment where we are exposed to different kind of stresses on our day-to-day life, and the latest addition being the techno stress, which is being forcefully induced on us because of the COVID scenario. When you try to analyze what could be the major contributing factors for this increase of stress, especially in the present era, one thing that comes to our mind is most of us are living in a concrete jungle now, very much far away from nature, an environment where most of us are born and brought up in our early ages, probably because of our educational commitments, or some because of employment commitments. We're totally away from nature. I don't even remember when I had the time to get up and just take the fresh oxygen. It was something we all are kind of getting used to some sort of a machine life. We don't have much time to really think, breathe, and all. But the nature is the best nourisher for human body as well as mind. So many researches have been conducted. Being in nature and even viewing a natural scene can reduce the anger, fear, and so many negative emotions what we all have been exposed. So exposure to nature not only makes us feel better emotionally, it also contributes to our physical well-being also. It helps in reducing the blood pressure, heart rate, and even muscular tensions. And it tries to arrest the production of stress hormones also. Some studies even say being closer to nature or exposure to nature may even reduce mortality, because quoted by the famous public health researchers such as Dr. Mitchell and all. So many other studies, research studies, in fact, indicate like so much of health benefits by the nature. It lowers the salivary cortisol, the stress hormone, by up to 15.8 percentage, and it reduces pulse rate by up to 6 percentage. In fact, increase. Madam, you're about to say something. Sucharita, madam, you are unmuted.
No, sir.
Yeah, so it increases the overall sympathetic activity, that is feeling of stress, by 19.4 percentage. So the point what I want to make over here is like this nature by itself has got so much of a contributory value, especially when it comes to handling our day-to-day stress and keeping our mental health in a better place. So rightly and so aptly, today we have selected the topic on eco-psychology, where we get to hear from one of the uh, eminent practitioner of this particular area, Ms. Suma Brahmik. On behalf of Center, we really express our gratitude for accepting our invitation and being part of our program. We hope like this particular talk also will be very much interactive, and it is going to be enlightening for all the participants. So without taking much of your time, let us go ahead and then let us hear it from the resource person. Now I would request Ms. Sucharita Dutt to introduce the resource person and continue the proceedings. Thank you, and over to you, Ms. Sucharita.
Thank you, sir. So I will just brief about our today's presenter. Sorry. Ms. Shoma Pramanik. She is the assistant professor in NSHM College campus. She has completed her BSc and Masters in Psychology from University of Calcutta. Even she has done MPhil in Clinical Psychology from Institute of Psychiatry, Kolkata. Currently, he has submitted his PhD at Department of Psychology, University of Calcutta, and cross your finger, we are eagerly waiting, and she is also waiting to get the DR dot. Her achievements are that she has stood fourth in Masters and third at MPhil. She was awarded the NET GRF Fellowship. She has 5 publications till date and has presented a paper at NACIACP in 2020-18. She is keenly interested in qualitative research and have corroborated on researchers using various qualitative methods too. So we are very glad that you have accepted our invitations, and we are eagerly waiting to enrich ourselves on eco-psychology. Over to you, Shoma ma'am. I think you have to unmute.
Yes, I just realized. Thank you. Thank you for the lovely words. Thank you, sir, for considering me for this talk. And I hope I'll be able to share some insight on eco-psychology. I also hope I'll be able to learn something, and I hope I'll be able to give something of value. So although this is a presentation, I would request you all that if you have any question at any point of time, please feel free to ask. Right. So, without waiting any further, I'll start. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, it is visible. It is visible.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Okay, so first let us understand that what is eco-psychology. So we have heard the terms environmental psychology, we've heard the terms environmental science, but eco-psychology or green psychology is comparatively a new term. And let me tell you, as we progress through this, we'll see that This is a term that came into existence, I think, a few decades back, and we are still trying to find a place for this field as a discipline, nurturing it as a discipline. So, but let us first understand that what eco-psychology is. So, eco-psychology studies the relationship between the human beings and the natural world through ecological and psychological principles. As a psychology, it seeks to comprehend humankind's interrelationship with the non-human world, to diagnose what is wrong with that interrelationship, and to suggest paths to heal it. Now, when we read about eco-psychology, we often think that it is the same as environmental psychology, but it is not so. Why? Environmental psychology deals with how the world or how the urbanization, how the architecture around us, the situation around us play a role in our thought process. So basically, how are we affected by the situations around us? And in this situation, we mostly mean the landscape, the urban plans, the architecture. But what ecological psychology or what eco-psychology does is eco-psychology brings into fore the human being, or how is it that how are we connected with nature, or how are we connected with the ecology, and what do we bring in there, and what is going on there that is going wrong with the nature. So eco-psychology is very much to do with the ecological revolution that came on in the 1960s. So more on that in the next slide. So but here, before going into the definition, I'll also say about Roszak. So we'll hear more about Roszak, or Theodore Roszak, who is who was a historian, but he has major contributions in this field in eco-psychology. So as we can see that it is the term most often used for the emerging synthesis for how psychological and ecological come together. And for this we can use several terms, but no matter what the term we use, what we need to understand is, and what we look forward to is also, we need to ecologize psychology and psychologize ecology. So we'll understand ecology from a psychological perspective. It seeks to understand and heal our relationship with the earth. And I think although these definitions, they were given in 1995 and 1998, standing in 2021, I do believe that we understand that it has grown more important than ever. Yes, the coronavirus pandemic has changed our ways of living for about 1.5 years now. But over this 1 year and over this 2021, we have also seen unprecedented natural calamities. And we are understanding that global warming is perhaps at our doors more than ever, and it is at an alarming rate. So these definitions that were given in 1995 and 1998 are perhaps more pertinent than ever. And why so? Because even in this era of global warming, we are somehow seeing a lot of individuals, or we are somehow seeing the effort, or we are seeing even on the place of policymakers, that there is a delay in change, that the change is not really happening. So anyway, let's contextualize the discipline to understand the discipline, where it is placed, and why discipline in quotes, because psychology is an emerging discipline as of now. So as I said, that it has its roots in the ecological revolution in 1960s. especially when in the Western civilizations or countries we saw that industrial revolution is or the industrial development, infrastructural development is bringing over unprecedented crisis in terms of resources in fossil fuel and also in increase in climate change, drastic change in climate and increase in temperature. Now, along with this, there was a paradigm shift in philosophy and theology. In philosophy, which has always thought about human mind, human thinking, and higher thinking, we saw something come up such as eco philosophy. I think many of you have heard the term Gaia philosophy, GAIA. So, where it says that human beings and nature are interconnected and that there is an invisible cord, perhaps, that connects us with our surroundings. So, this was a change in philosophy, and there was a change in theology or in religious disciplines as well. And here we're talking about mostly Christianity, because if we look at Indian or if we look at Eastern religions, nature has played or has always been given an important role in all the pagan religions or in all the Eastern religions. So move from anthropocentrism to ecocentrism. So anthropocentrism is somewhere which tells about survival of the fittest, or when we talk about that, we have subjugated nature, we have managed to defeat nature, and we are coming up as bigger players. But here there was a change, and the shift came about that human beings and nature need to coexist. It is not a relationship of domination. And nature is not something that is a passive entity and that needs to be ignored. So, if we look at the formalization of the discipline, then perhaps the first formalization came from the coinage of the term psychoecology by Robert Greenway. He was, in fact, a student of Abraham Maslow, which I'm sure we are all aware of. Then this book came out by Nature and Madness by Paul Shepard, and some have given him or credited him as the father of eco-psychology. So Robert Greenway's student was Shapiro, who formed this psychoecology discussion group, where several people, with several eminent philosophers and stalwarts began to join. Rozak also joined this group, and later on his seminal book came out, The Voice of the Earth. And perhaps that was a reckoning in the field of eco-psychology. So now when we understand that what is eco-psychology, we have already said that it is not environmental psychology. Is someone unmuted? Please mute yourself. So, this epistemological position, when we say, so eco-psychology is at the juncture or at the intersection of many related disciplines. So, if we plant this as a z-axis, as a front to back, so we can see that it has its origin in nature's spirituality. As I said, that the change in theology, the change in philosophy. So while it is rooted in nature and natural practices in spirituality, it also has practical implications in the form of having concrete ways of experiential environmental education. So for this, we can take examples of how we often go on nature walks, how schools often organized walks for students on World Environment Day, and how students or how children would interact with nature and find out unique ways or find out new things about the world around us, about the microcosm around us. So then if we look at eco-psychology from a practicing point of view, this vertical axis that we see, this is the application part. So one, it can be used on a very individual level, which I will cover a little bit before finishing. So that is about ecotherapy, so directly therapeutic applications, and it is being now used and connecting with nature through different ways. And on the other hand, if we look at it, so this is at the individual level. Now, if we look at the societal level or the community level, then we are talking about environmental activism. So we see a lot of Greta Thunberg. Yes, the name is very that we have, I cannot recall the surname right now, but Subhash Chakraborty or Subhash, something who works on nature conservation, who is an environmental activist. So that also comes under the purview of eco-psychology in its applications. While the nature, spirituality and environmental education was the theoretical basis or the philosophical belief, this is the practical implication. And on the horizontal axis, we have the theoretical basis. That once we come from the processes, the depth and transpersonal psychology, so we are basically even going to psychodynamic explanations, especially Jungian psychology. We know the concept of anima and animus, or we know the concept of a world or a collective unconscious. Now we are talking about an ecological unconscious as well. And we are also looking at scientifically informed empirical approaches through conservation psychology and human ecology, which focus more on the social cognitive approach and which has a more of behavioral experimental approaches. So now, if we look at on the basis of these underpinnings, we need to keep in mind three things: that eco-psychology is experiential. So it is not something that you read totally from books. It is not something that you practice within in an AC room. It is not something where you write treatise or books or a lot of word documents. You have to interact and you have to act in order to know and in order to grow. Eco-psychology is also speculative, theoretical, and philosophical, as we see in its underpinnings on nature and philosophy, and as we see in its background in depth psychology. And eco-psychology has practical implications. This is I covered in ecotherapy and in case of environmental activism. So then, what are the foci, or what is the focus of eco-psychology? What do they want to do? So, one, we are looking at the emerging synthesis of ecology, the natural world, and psychology. So, the natural world and the human's world, the self world. It involves the skillful application of ecological insight to the practice of psychotherapy. And this is very important that I should cover it at the end, but that we can learn from ecology and we can apply it to our individual practice, and that it may work as a focus or as a mode of healing. The discovery of our emotional bond with the planet. Now, this is very important because unless we realize this, unless we understand this, unless we feel it, we will not feel the need to conserve, protect, and restore also. Yes, are there any questions? Hello? Okay. Okay. So also it's the search for an environmentally based standard of mental health. Now this is a very interesting point that eco-psychologists have consistently said that the point of ecology has been discussed by everyone. The point of dysfunction in psychology has been discussed from every aspect except for the environment. So where we live, the literally the place on which we live, we have not discussed about that. So this environmentally based standard of mental health is something that is coming up and that we'll see in one of the later slides. Defining sanity as if the whole world mattered. I'll talk more about it. Now, as I said a few minutes before, as Rozak had said, to ecologize psychology and to psychologize ecology is the aim of eco-psychology. And what we are doing is we want to re-envision psychology within an ecological context. So we want to redefine psychology. We want to revisit psychology and we want to see the roots of human functioning, the roots of human mind in the how it is embedded in nature. And we want to develop a our Earth, our planet with new kinds of calamities occurring in places where it was, such as forest fires in Greece and in Spain, of natural calamities such as back-to-back cyclones in West Bengal. We are seeing a number of increase in natural calamities, such as a lot more number of increasing number of flash floods. We are still not in a position to actually bring about change. At individual level, slightly yes, but at the societal level, at the nationwide level, at the international level. The change needs to come in policy making, the change needs to come in politics. And we are not seeing that. And time is running away. So for that, we need to understand or we need to formulate even a movement where this would actually happen. And we need to understand that how is it that we view nature? Where is the dysfunction in our view of nature that we are so bent on subjugating, dominating, or even destroying it? Why are we not putting in the effort to restore nature? Those are the answers or those are the things that we are looking for in order to develop this psychologically sensitive and sophisticated environmental activism. So first, I am looking at the point of ecologizing or to ecologize psychology. And there, the fundamental question that comes up is, why do human beings persist in destroying their habitat? So what is wrong, or perhaps using the word is wrong is being judgmental. What is unique about the case that we want to destroy or that we want to damage the place that we live in? We want to damage our natural habitat. So in that case, we have several theoretical understandings that have come from that some of them come from natural sciences, some come from ecology, some comes from psychology. So one is that, see, this connect with nature, or rather lack of it. So basically, lack of connect with nature and its relationship with healthy adult functioning. So this theory explains that we are uh, we are wired. We are wired biologically in such a way that we need to grow up in sync, that we need to grow up in sync with our natural environment, with our environmental context. Just think of how we say that, children need to play, and children need to play in natural environment in order to grow. So this theory says that this natural process of growing, this natural ontological process of growing, which would lead to healthy adult functioning, is not happening, cannot happen because of the current, because of urban planning, because of the current industrial structure, and because of the current way of living in this world. Now, frustration of this natural wiring of living is creating certain unmet needs or certain frustrations. And from there, an unconscious reparation or repercussion towards nature is coming, where the individual is trying to harm the nature. So it's more of a reactionary approach to the frustration of the biologically wired needs. The next point is an ecological unconscious. Do we really have an ecological unconscious? Some of the theorists say that yes, we do. So we not only have an collective unconscious, we actually have an unconscious that is in tune, that is intuitively connected with our nature. We are, so we do not learn to, for example, we do not learn to flinch at the sound of lightning because we see others do it. We flinch at the sound of lightning because it's wired within us. So that is the point of ecological unconscious. The next point, this fall of primal matrix and a flawed worldview. Now, what is primal matrix? So, according to certain theorists and according to certain philosophers, human beings are basically wired again, or we evolved, or we were in a position where we lived in a symbiotic relationship with nature for millions and millions of years. With the onset of agrarian society, with the onset of subjugation and of civilizations, there was this primal matrix fell, and our ways of living changed. So this fall in primal matrix is actually the cause of disconnect with nature. It is a cause of basic dissatisfaction within us. And this flawed worldview is this. This flawed worldview can be actually elaborated with the next point, the change in nature of our relationship with nature. Whereas at one point we had respect towards nature and this relationship was participative, from that it changed to one of dominance, that we can do whatever we want to with nature. Deforestation is not huge proof of it. And subjugating nature. That not just harnessing nature, but also on the other hand, bringing harm to it. And we thought that is normal and that is accepted. So now, remember the second point that I had said, the foci, the redefining sanity. Now here I would like to quote a line by Niepid Rck. Can a society be sick? Niepid Rck had asked this question in 1955, post World War II, where 1/3 of the world population had perished in the 6-year long war. The same question or a similar question was also posed by Sigmund Freud at the end of World War I. And eco-psychologists posed the same question, that do we need to redefine sanity? Is it really about is it really about just adequate psychological functioning of the individual? Is it really about achieving goals, and is it really about having no disruption in socio-occupational functioning? Or do we need to look into the individual's relationship in context with nature, with his or her surrounding? And in this context, the first point that we come to is dysfunctional environmental relations. Now, this is actually a limit that psychology, especially when we are learning about psychopathology, we have tried to uh, study all kind of dysfunctional approaches, right? Dysfunctional thoughts, dysfunctional family, dysfunctional bonds, dysfunctional relationships. However, we have never looked at the dysfunction that may exist in our bond with nature. And why so? And why not so? So it needs to be looked at, as I said, from the earlier theoretical perspective, where we said that there is this fall of primal matrix. The other point, if we next see that if we redefine sanity in terms of environmental standards of mental health, we perhaps need to view self not just as an individual, not just in their interpersonal context, that their relationships with family, with friends and their workplace. We also need to see self in the context of and in relation to other human beings at large, other beings such as animals, insects, the other things that exist around us, as well as non-beings. Are we kind to the creatures around us? Are we kind to nature? Are we fostering nature, or are we being ignorant of it? Does it not matter to us? Or is it that we are uh, we are proactively, or we are taking our own initiative to kind of destroy nature? And ecological conscience, very important, something that we need to have if we are looking for any change at the level of policy making. Uh, whether or not to waste water, whether or not to waste a resource, we need to understand. And an ecological harmonious sense of self and world. Now, this is somewhere very prominent in indigenous societies, even in certain indigenous societies in in India and various other countries. But we really do not see that in our so-called urban, civilized, Tier 1, Tier 2 cities. And also, we need to perhaps, while redefining sanity, we also need to look at the criteria of happiness. We need to look at happiness from non-material wealth. Now, I use the word wealth consciously over here. So, can uh, can having a garden close by my home be considered as wealth? Can having a mango tree grow surreptitiously in my backyard considered as wealth? Those are the questions we need to ask. And the concept happiness and plenitude. Plenitude means a sense of enoughness. When do we have enough? And when do we have enough is an important question when we look at consumerism, when we look at addiction, when we look at our over usage of anything. So now, as I said, that when we are looking at eco-psychology, we first looked at where it comes from, then we looked at redefining sanity. Now we are looking at the need to change the worldview, cosmology, and to understand the theoretical underpinnings of eco-psychology. So, as we see, eco-psychology's theoretical underpinnings and the worldview, once again, I have to borrow this line from Rosat. He said, the model we choose, now the model we choose to think, to cognize, to conceptualize our world, our nature, our earth, can make a great deal of difference. Conceive of nature as a machine, any machine, even a thinking machine like a computer, and you assume one relationship to the world. Conceive of it as sentient mentality, one who thinks for itself, one who has a conscience, one who has consciousness, and you take another stance. And it says that, we have to, and Rosak over here provides a lot of proofs that are coming in natural sciences, where we see how the world is changing, how we once thought that particle has no consciousness, but now we see that everything is not really so random. We thought the earth entered, or the universe entered in black hole, and now we are saying, no, the black hole is not really an end. It actually has, again, it opens up. The universe is ever expanding. Theory of chaos is really interesting, and that there is a matter of chance, there is a matter of randomness, there is a matter of accident in cause of evolution. And on the other hand, the movement of particles, the movement of subatomic particles may not be so random, may not be so coincidental, may not be so chaotic. There is an ounce of intention in it, and we see all of these when we study metaphysics. So, and along with that, Rosat said that, see, this cosmology is changing. So we need to understand nature as a creative, conscious, ever-changing being, as a living being. And then the way we view nature, the way we see universe will change. The way we act towards it will change. The way we interact will change. And the way we think about it will also change. Also, eco-psychology heavily relies on theories of ecology, because which says that human psyche is actually an integral part of the web of nature, like I said about the primal matrix, and we perhaps need more empirical evidence to go to that. Reliance on biophilia hypothesis. So biophilia hypothesis says that we actually have an intuitive interconnection with the world around us, with the natural world around us, and we intuitively want to do things that preserve this connection rather than go away from it. And that is how eco-psychology is trying to push and prove itself as a discipline that, see, this is what is happening in the natural world. Now, here I am going through an important juncture, and actually in the third part of the last part of my presentation. So, I said that eco-psychology, so I just take 4 more minutes. So, eco-psychology has practical implications. And I have been talking about policymaking, politics, societal level change, community level change. So here there is a question for environmental activists. We do know a lot of environmental activists, but this is a question for all of us who perhaps there are people who are being active in the real world. There are some people who are sharing those posts on social media, trying to spread awareness in their own small circle, trying to be conscious in their behavior themselves, trying to bring about a change in their peers' behavior, in their families' stance. And this is a question for all of us: that are we being effective? Because if we are not being effective, then are we really doing enough? So in that case, we have certain questions that come in. So some of the questions that we need to look at is that environmental activists, typically we work on the motivations of shame, guilt, and dread. That you shame the other person in doing certain things. So for example, now we are looking at sustainable practices of sustainable clothing. So if you are giving a guilt trip, if you're guilt tripping someone into buying sustainable clothing, will that work? Are you shaming someone because they are buying clothing from huge market retailers or retailers? Will that bring about a change in their behavior? Will that lead them to tell others that no, do not buy clothes from that particular website because they do not follow sustainable clothing practices? Or this dread that change that the world, the temperature, global temperature has increased by 1.5 degrees and can change up to 1 degree centigrade if we do not make these changes. Are they enough to make cause a change? Maybe not. We need to look at certain practices that will cause positive reinforcement. So you do something and you get reinforced for that. That might be more effective in bringing about a change. Next question is, what are the psychological factors that influence our environmental behavior? And here I'll again go back to the theoretical underpinnings, and what we need to look at the in fact, along with this, I'll look at what are some of the eco-psychological problems. So the problems of overload, too much of information on our sensory systems, psychic numbing, that we are not being able to do anything, that it is anyway going to, it is anyway going to get damaged, it is anyway going to get destroyed, so why try? Giving up is easier. Or not knowing, closing my eyes to it. Plain simple denial. Consumer and techno addiction. So this desire of having more and more, this desire of having newest technology, and how it is also reinforced by the technological giants, that you can upgrade to the new phone at a lower cost. So repressed grief. So we are not being allowed to feel. We are not letting ourselves grieve. This psychology or this movement of this toxic positivity, the environment of toxic positivity. Also environmental anxiety. So those might be some of the eco-psychological problems and psychological factors that need to be looked into. Also, since when we are talking about an environmental activist, it can be frustrating to work day after day and not seeing so much of change, or and it can be exhausting, it can cause burnout as well. And what drives me as an activist? Why is it that I am doing this? If I know my motivation, if I am aware of my motivation, if I I'm aware of my drive, my reasons, I'll perhaps find the a greater energy to sustain this. Now, if we are looking at some key points of action, so one would be that experiential learning uh, with nature. So in eco psychology, it helps form, it helps people to form a spiritual and emotional connection to the ecological system. As I said, that we need to discover our emotional bond to nature, of which they're a part. Sometimes some small group activities, community activities can change ecologically significant behavior. It can establish healthier human relationships. Like I said, nature walks or the ones that we were led to as a child on World Environment Day. Perhaps those can be done much more frequently and on many more levels. Healing the relationship between person and planet must take place on several levels. On individual level in the form of psychotherapy, at the community level, at the national level, and at the global level. Also, the idea of self, the kind of things we value in ourselves. So, we value intelligence a lot. Perhaps it is time to value sensitivity. Perhaps it is time to value kindness. And only then we can move towards a self that is embedded in our intuitive connect with nature. And just one pertinent application to see that how eco-psychology is actually working. So, ecotherapy. Now, in this form of ecotherapy, I'll just ask you to look back at the novels or the movies that we used to read or watch as children. And the doctors used to say, कि if you are unwell, I'm just using one Bengali phrase over here, change जान या फिर आप कहीं से घूम कर आइए. And typically in Bengalis, in the novels, it would say that they are to western part. So in this western part would be Jharkhand or Chota Malwa Plateau. But these people would recover. Now, interestingly, research shows that being in natural settings actually accentuates and accelerates the process of recovery. For individuals having even physical disorders, Ulrich's work is with patients with who had gallbladder surgery, and he found these patients recovered faster when they used to take walks in nature. Some studies have also seen that in case of trauma, in case of psychological trauma, especially with children, being in nature was found to be healing. These children said that they felt safe in nature, and it is supported evidence-wise by the evolutionary theories. As some researchers say that we respond positively to natural environments due to our genetic predisposition to feel well or to be connected with nature. And in case of therapeutic applications, we can see contemplative practices such as mindfulness meditation having a lot of benefits, plus wilderness journeys. Now, these have also been started since 1980s, and these wilderness journeys have found to be especially effective. Um, it is saying that it builds teamwork, it builds self-worth of a person, and it's not just about being with others, it's about being in connect with nature, help the person discover a lot of things about themselves. So now I'll open the floor to questions. Oh, and a belated greetings for Mahalaya.
Thank you. Thank you. And I can see a question coming up. So this was a new area for many of us. And so I think people will be taking, as already Anuparna has said, it will take a time for understanding and implementations also. And she has put a question also: how can special educators implement eco psychology in teaching profession? While she joins again, I think there was a network issue. So you may put your question on the chat box so that she can take up the question.
Right. Sorry, I got disconnected. My internet connection is faltered. Right. So to answer the question, that how we can use it in teaching profession, I would suggest that perhaps you can we may try out having one session, especially regarding materials, regarding things that can be learned in connection with nature. For example, if we are doing a course of biology and just learning the different parts of a plant, and if we do that, for example, in a garden, and maybe doing just one or two plants, keeping the same principles of repetition, keeping the same principles of educational psychology in mind, keeping the same behavioral principles in mind. But if we do that in nature, if we use a real plant as a demo, I think that might be one thing in which we can help. Or if a child is stimming, or if we see the child is very distracted, perhaps exposing them to certain nature sounds. That may also help. I believe that might help in case of disruption or in this. I mean, does that resolve your question?
Anuparna, do you want to ask
Anuparna.
anything?
Yes.
Yes. Do you want to ask anything else? Related to that, we have another question on behavioral aspect. Is there any implementation of eco psychology in behavior therapy?
Okay, so this I'll have to look at, but if we look at the contemplative practice of mindfulness meditation, now mindfulness, as we know, it is based somewhere in the cognitive and behavioral principles. So when we are using mindfulness meditation practices, that is one part. Uh, so that would be, but I think classical behavioral principles may not be so used. But if we look at the third wave behavior theories that come up, and they talk about more from learning from experience, doing it to learn it, using behavioral experiments as we do in cognitive behavior therapy. So again, there ecotherapy can have a role where you can have those experiments in natural context and with regard to learning skills in such contexts.
There is an query. Can you suggest some readings on eco psychology?
Yes, I can. What I'll do is, Shucharitadi, I'll forward you some of the materials that I use to read, right? And you can share it, I guess. Will
Sure.
that do?
Yeah, definitely. That will help them also.
Yes.
As another point that has been come up is any reference reading, case studies, if you share, that will be useful for us.
Case studies, right now, I do not have to share. But again, if I find a case study in literature, I'll forward it.
Next question is: how does eco psychology affect our lives?
Eco psychology. affects our lives, I believe, quite importantly. One, at the level of individual well being. As you said, and as I showed several researches, that it has been seen that when we live in natural context or in connection with nature, we feel better. I mean, so that is at the level of individual well being. Second, I do believe that we need to look at the concept of our connection with nature. We need to look at the concept of non material wealth and the concept of plenitude, because really the question comes that how far can we have and how many things can we have? How many things do we need? Uh, and I do believe that the world is facing global warming and severe climate change, and scientists are also saying that. So, in terms of bringing changes in policy making, also, I believe we need certain urgent, immediate, and intensive work in ecopsychology. So that would be my answer. Yeah.
Reshmi Shah, you have raised hand. Do you want to ask any question to ma'am? Reshmi? Okay, there is one question from house. That is, I would be saying two questions from the in-house. That is, could you shed some light on animal-assisted ecotherapy?
Yes,
Animal
correct.
assisted.
Right, I could not cover that, but animal assisted and horticulture have been found to be parts of ecotherapy. As we see that animal assisted therapy can be very helpful in case of individuals who have had history of trauma or who are suffering from trauma. There are several animals who are trained as trauma therapy, especially dogs, and animal assisted therapy has also found to have benefits in case of work with children with special needs or persons with unique needs, with disabilities. In case of autism, there is some research.
I will take the last question. Are there any ecotherapy happening currently? If you can recommend it, we can suggest to parents with multiple disabilities.
Okay, is there any ecotherapy sessions that are currently happening around us, right? So this I have to find out, and again I'll forward this information to you before tomorrow's session. Tutorial.
Thank you. Thank you.
हाँ.
What I could understand means this was also, as you I discussed with you also, that this was a very new field for us, right? So I what I could understand is this, our emotional responses are very much associated with the climatic changes, and so I could find that I would like to conclude that, like, during this pandemic, we could realize when we face this global crisis on a global scale, we could find the importance, I think, of the nature. Well, this was a requirement, I would be saying, because we were having a very a rat race, and because of these crises, we could recognize, or we could change our lifestyles and our thinking process. And this, I think, was the need of the hour, that we should now focus on our nature, because nature is related to us. We are living in the nature, and which is connecting our mind. That's why we think this is a blooming field, that the eco psychology, and we should now look forward to bring not only the unconscious mind, the ego, or the superego, but we should also focus on the ecological unconsciousness, which is an important concept of this eco psychology. So, thank you, Shoma. Um,
Thank you for inviting me, and I had a wonderful time.
we also
Uh,
had a wonderful time listening to you. very beautifully, a very innovative concept in a nutshell that take a toll, and you did that very well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I wish you all a wonderful day and festive greetings because it's festival everywhere, right? We are
Thank you.
coming on that. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, then I'll take the
Participants?
lead.
Yeah, thank you. Participants, I'm sharing the feedback form. Please do fill it up. I've shared the feedback link for this session, for today's session. Yesterday's sessions, many people was not able to fill it. I will again share the link. But today, first you complete today's feedback, then I will share the yesterday's feedback too. Thank you, participants. Your feedback motivates us and helps us to modify the program too. We try to bring new concepts, though the time was very short, but we had tried to present the eco psychology in a nutshell to you so that you can think over the new concept and we can also apply it in our field of disability. Just a reminder, all are requested to fill the feedback form. On Friday, we will be dispatching the badge and we will release the e-certificate for your active participation for the Mental Health Awareness Week. So every day, don't forget to fill the feedback form. I will again share the feedback form once again. Yes, now I'm sharing yesterday's feedback. I've just now shared yesterday's feedback. Feedback link.
ম্যাম গুড আফটারনুন। ম্যাম আই এম রেশমি। ম্যাম আপনি আমাকে ডাকছিলেন, সরি তখন আমি রেসপন্স করতে পারিনি, আমার মাইকটা কাজ করছিল না, তো আমি আনমিউট হতে পারিনি। সরি ম্যাম ফর মাই বিহেভিয়ার।
No, actually your hand was raised, so I thought you might be asking some question. It's okay.
ইয়েস ম্যাম। ম্যাম দিস টপিক ইজ ভেরি নিউ ফর মি, বাট ম্যাম খুব ভালো করে এক্সপ্লেইন করেছেন, তো আরো কিছু জানতে পারবো পরে। তো সেশনটা
Yeah, it
খুব
was
নতুন।
very it's also new for many of us also. So that's why we took this topic and later we can have an in-depth discussion on this topic.
ইয়েস ম্যাম। তো তখন আমি রেসপন্স করতে পারিনি, আপনি আমাকে ডাকছিলেন, আমি চ্যাট বক্সেও লিখেছিলাম, বাট এখন ঠিক আছে। ওকে থ্যাংক ইউ ম্যাম, হ্যাপি পূজা ম্যাম। ওকে
Thank you. I've read your message also.
থ্যাংক ইউ ম্যাম।
Thank you.
ইয়েস ম্যাম, থ্যাংক ইউ, অ্যান্ড টেক কেয়ার ম্যাম। ম্যাম ফিডব্যাক ফর্ম ফিল আপ করেছি, তো এখন কি লিভ করতে পারি? দুদিনেরটাই আমি করেছি।
Exactly,
Okay,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Ekdom.
Okay, thank you, ma'am, and take care. Bye, ma'am.
I think we are good for now. So thank you everyone. It was a pleasure being with you today. Tomorrow again we will be coming up with a new topic, with a new discussion, or I would be saying a new talk on art in mind, how to think in a positive way. So don't forget to join us again tomorrow at 4 p.m. I will share the flyer in the Telegram group. Thank you everyone once again. Bye.
ম্যাম ফিডব্যাক ফর্ম ফিল আপ করা হয়ে গেছে ম্যাম।
Yes, you may leave.
ওকে ম্যাম, ওকে, থ্যাংক ইউ ম্যাম।